Hajime! Welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. JT McRoberts here with you once again. Normally we like to talk about comic fight scenes or storytelling or some other part of the creative process, but today we're going to give you another edition of the Monday morning mailbag. Roll that theme song, cause it's the Monday morning mailbag. It's the Monday morning. That's your part where you sing along, because audience participation is always a lot of fun, which is why we're doing another mailbag today, because I've been gathering some comments online and I thought we'd go through them. First up, we've got Alexander Buck commenting on X-Men Comics God Loves, Man Kills. Thank you for sharing this piece of history. You are most welcome, Alexander. Thank you for the kind comments. I wish I could tell you that I had recorded this a long time ago. I found it online. I did not see this clip on YouTube in particular, so I thought, hey, you know what, I'll throw it up here, make it part of the Comic-Jutsu archive for now, because that's how we like to do it. And up next, we've got The Milkman Cometh, commented on part of our super secret movie rules slasher series. Now that is one of my videos that I recorded, let's say 20 years ago now, when it aired on whatever channel it was on, AMC or something, I don't even remember now, though I still have the original VHS on which it was recorded, and then I transferred that VHS over to DVD and ripped it to a digital file, which I then uploaded in pieces, because I haven't found anyone else that actually has this particular video out there on the internet for people to watch. And he commented, I wish there were more shows like this. Maybe there are, because I don't have cable, I don't see it. But part of the fun of these shows is comedians being terrible at being funny and saying dumb stuff. That's true. There's a lot of stupid comments on there in the videos itself. Props to Kevin Williamson, Scream, and Sick, and others. Plus I'll give him props for Vampire Diaries are great. And I agree, I've never watched Vampire Diaries, but maybe I should check it out. I am a big fan of Kevin Williamson, and what he and Wes Craven did with Scream really helped revitalize the entire horror genre, if not the slasher genre, though it almost killed the slasher genre. Once you start kind of poking fun at anything and poke holes in all the premises, it gets a little bit hard to follow that up. But fortunately, after you have that that kind of deconstruction phase and it runs its course, then you have a reconstruction phase. So what we saw, a good years after Scream was released, we saw the reconstruction of the slasher genre, and we had this new neo slasher wave, which actually I made a short slasher film that was part of that. You can see it right here over my shoulder. I just dropped my Apple Pen. No. Scarecrow at Midnight. That is my short slasher film, and usually around Halloween I will make it public so people can watch it for free online. Otherwise you have to buy a copy of Tales from Mutantville over at the Amazon place. So thank you for that comment, Milkman Cometh. There are a lot of really cool documentaries like this. I like that they were able to get some people that actually knew what they were talking about, and they could put, a few kernels of information in there for you. They talked to Wes Craven, we talked to Dee Snider, who's a very knowledgeable guy in horror himself. Kevin Williamson was on there, and a few other things. But anyway, I'm a big fan of those kind of videos. I spent years just collecting all of them until there became this this unrelenting glut of these documentaries, looking back at these films. If you're a fan of that stuff, check out, what is the crowd-funded one? In Search of Horror, In Search of Something. I missed the first horror one, but I was able to get into the science fiction one. If I can think of it, I'll let you know. It's not a very good recommendation when I can't remember what it is. But anyway, so moving on. On my video, They Love You When You Make Money and Don't When You Don't. John Carpenter on the studios. We have a comment from Tyler Durden who said, just like women. Well, you know, Tyler, you said the quiet part out loud. It's not that everybody doesn't know that. It's just that we're not supposed to say it out loud, that women essentially love you for your bank account. Though when you say that out loud, then you wind up getting attacked and people think you're bitter, or they just try to dismiss you by calling you an incel or whatever, and there's actually a few direct replies to you online. But I'm with you, buddy. We just don't say it out loud, you know. Just roll with the punches when you can. We know the truth, though. But of course, true love still exists, ladies. Of course it does. Of course it does. Once you get onto your third marriage, that's the real one. Anyway, next up, we've got Siskel and Ebert Get It Wrong about this George A. Romero zombie masterpiece from 1985. It's part of a new series that I debuted during October just to get into the Halloween horror spirit kind of thing. And I thought, hey, let's look back at some classic reviews of some great films that were just not appreciated at their time. Day of the Dead, in my opinion, by George Romero is definitely one of them. It still has its detractors, but there are a lot of people that, like me, that just think it's an absolute masterpiece. So Maniac, with a appropriately named, and he has the Maniac title font there in his photo. He says, the older I get, the more I agree with them. It is watchable, but Tom Savini was the star, referring to the effects, which minds you, yeah, the effects are pretty great. But I'm just a big fan of the entire setup. I like the protagonist. I love the antagonist. I love the supporting characters. Of course, the effects are absolutely brilliant. You know, the work by Savini and the budding K&B effects at the time. You know, guys like Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger and those guys. The effects that they made in that still stand up to today, and things that you would see on The Walking Dead, for example. And in some ways, they're even better because they did not use any CGI to enhance or replace what they did physically. So, there you go. I don't agree with them, though. I agree with me on that. But thank you for the comment. Up next, we've got... our next Critics Can't Figure Out. I've got to come up with a good title for that particular series. I'm not sure what to call it at this moment. I can't figure out the title for it, but this is The Critics Can't Figure Out John Carpenter's classic science fiction horror film in 1982. And of course, we're referring to The Thing. Why I use such a clickbaity title? Because one has to in this era of digital media and, you know, relentless YouTube uploads. But in the thumbnail, you know, obviously says The Thing. It has a picture of the poster art. So if you're familiar with it, you know exactly what it is. Tom MC says, I'm pretty much in total agreement with you. Nice dissection of their review. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Carpenter's The Thing is a master class in filmmaking. 40 plus years later, people are still debating the ending. They are. That is one of the many things that makes it great. I was just scrolling through social media just this past week, and people were like, hey, let's talk about John Carpenter's The Thing. I think MacReady was really the thing at the end of the movie. And that's part of the debate. I actually do not. I actually like the alternate optional continuation that appeared in the comic book series, which I need to review at some point. Maybe I will do it for next Halloween season, though John Carpenter seems to be kind of a hot topic right now. I probably should have done it this Halloween, but I was able to get enough other videos uploaded. I didn't have to do that for content. But it continues the story after the end of the film and shows what happens with MacReady. It's pretty cool. I really liked it. Published by Dark Horse Comics. People are still debating the ending and still missing the point. Good comment. It's deliberately ambiguous because the answer is moot. Cellular remains exist, and ultimately it's the end of the world as we know it. Man, oh man, oh man. That's deep thought. Great comment there from Tom MC. Appreciate that. I'll keep thinking about that one myself, but I agree wholeheartedly with everything you had to say there. He goes on to leave another comment. Also, Carpenter's approach and Botine's effects are never going for the proverbial gross out. Now, in my review, I mentioned the gross out several times. Gross out referring to Stephen King's, one of his types of horror that he talks about in his book Danse Macabre, which, if you haven't read it and you're a storyteller that wants to work in horror or suspense in any form or fashion, I highly, highly, highly recommend that book by Stephen King. It was his first book on writing before he wrote On Writing several years later. But it talks about his relationship with horror stories, be they on radio, television, film, whatnot. And I think it should be required reading for anybody that wants to tell stories in the horror medium. So I mentioned it several times because in the reviews, Siskel and Ebert, they kept talking about the effects and the grossness of them over and over again. So I was responding to them, but of course we know I agree with you. They're never going for the proverbial gross out. As examples, the Norris transformation, he's green inside. It's borderline cartoony. It's true. It's also very unsettling. But the concept and execution are so disturbing. We agree. Even Dr. Copper's double amputation is almost bloodless. That's true, it is almost bloodless. When it does get bloody, like the autopsy, it's clinical, not gratuitous. It's deeply disturbing, but it's also triggering deep biological aversions to deformity and disease, which the average popcorn muncher or critic takes away as it made me feel gross. Great comments. You should be making your own reviews and dissections out there, because I agree with you 100% on that. Oh, we've got another Tom adding a comment there to the critics can't figure out John Carpenter's classic science fiction horror film in 1982, where Tom Frankowitz says, when I first saw The Thing on cable TV back in 83 or 84, I was completely caught up in the suspense and paranoia. The movie is so intense and nihilistic, I couldn't believe that critics and audiences didn't like it. Me too. Granted, E.T. was released a few weeks prior and was more family friendly. They also condemned the special effects. John Carpenter wanted to get away from a guy in a suit. E.T. definitely hurt that film. It was the summer of E.T. It wasn't that all of a sudden everybody wanted, aliens and horror films to be cute and cuddly. It was just that everything was about E.T. I even dressed as E.T. as a kid, and in this really cool costume with the E.T. mask and whatnot. I loved it so much. And I used to cry at the ending where E.T. dies, and then he comes back and he goes away. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen E.T. by now, what's wrong with you? But I remember I didn't get to see The Thing until a few years later when it was playing on the HBO Showtime Cinemax circuit. I'm not sure which one I caught it on, but it was always one of those films that was like talked about in hushed whispers, like a Cronenberg film. When you asked about scary movies, people would say, oh, well, Friday the 13th is scary. Oh, well, John Carpenter's Halloween is scary. And then they would get to Cronenberg or The Thing, that they're like, this movie, The Thing, it's crazy. It's too much. It's too scary. It's too crazy. Even as fans and as audience members, we just could not process it at the time, and it took time for people to really be able to endure it and accept it and get into it. And it's just part of John Carpenter's genius that he was able to create something like that works on so many levels and has endured for so many years. Really, really amazing piece of work. So thank you for the comment, Tom. I appreciate it. And up next we've got another comment on the critics can't figure out John Carpenter's classic science fiction horror film in 1982. From 21st Century Hip Hop, it scared them and they got angry about it. Yeah, you're probably right. It accomplished its purpose, its task. It disturbed the viewer. It freaked them out. It scared them. It terrorized them. It horrified them. And the critics do not always appreciate that, especially when it's something that they can't quite wrap their head around. They don't know what to do other than just reject it and deny it in an outright whole. So thank you for the comment there. Another comment on Books of Blood, early Clive Barker interview from the 1980s. This is another video that I found somewhere online. It didn't look like it was on YouTube, so I put it here on Comic-Jutsu to archive it. The comment is from Cinematic Madge. I remember this interview. He's a great inspiration. Well, that's cool that you saw that. You must be somewhere in the UK. I see the Union Jack there on your profile picture. So, hello, friends in the UK. Appreciate you guys watching. And it's very cool that you guys have had Jonathan Ross content over the years. When I first discovered him probably 20 years ago, I mean, it took the internet to make me aware of him. Before that, in the States, we had no Jonathan Ross. We did not know who he was as a person. His content never made it. I mean, his programs. I hate saying content. What I'm doing now is a piece of content. This is not art, okay? I'm actually taking a break from my art. This content crap detracts from it, okay? I'm taking a break from working on my thumbnails and breaking down the storytelling of my graphic novel, which is the whole reason of creating this content, to draw some eyes to my various products, so that when it is produced and ready for consumption, that people will actually know about me, know about it, and they'll pick it up. But anyway, that's why content is being made. But Jonathan Ross made these really great documentaries. What's the name of his TV show? Oh God, I'm completely blanking on names of all these documentaries today. Apologies for that. But Jonathan Ross is a cool dude. You guys are lucky to have him. And we're fortunate that they've started to trickle over here to the States via the internet. Oh, The Incredibly Strange Film Show and The Son of the Incredibly Strange Film Show. When I first encountered like clips of those, I was like, oh, these are great. These are brilliant. I have to track down the rest. And I did, of course. And that's how I got into Jonathan Ross. I'm a big fan of his. So thank you for the comment. And thank you for watching from the UK. Got a comment on The Art of Arthur Adams is great for Artist Edition fans. Unboxing new book, Classic Comics Art 2023. This is my video I uploaded this week where I unboxed the fantastic Art of Arthur Adams, which I just received in the mail. And when doing things like that and you're creating a piece of content, you have to do it quickly to beat the other YouTubers out there. Because once somebody with a larger audience creates a flip through or an unboxing of this book, my video loses all value as a piece of content. But if I can get it out early enough, you know, it'll catch a few eyes. So here we have Kerwin Johnson making a comment. Thanks for sharing. A fantastic book. How terrible that you were forced to burn your comic collection. Absolutely traumatizing, I'd imagine. You are 100% correct, Kerwin. Thank you for the comment. If you have not watched that video, I briefly explained that I had to replace my New Mutants Special 1 because the original copy that I bought off the newsstand was put into the great fire of 6th grade, as I like to call it, where I had recorded a C or something in math. My teacher called the parents, said I'm doing poorly. I mean, C, come on, it's not like an F or whatever, but what have you. And they said, you know what? He reads too many comic books, so let's get rid of those comic books. They started a bonfire out back and made me carry them box by box and dump them in the fire. It's just absolutely horrible. Horribly traumatizing, a horrific experience to live through. And I think it had the reverse effect of what my parents wanted. They wanted to destroy them, get comic books out of my life. And I thought, you know what? This is not going to stop me. I managed to save like one little shoebox of comics. It was mostly Marvel Universe, but there was like G.I. Joe 19 in there, you know, the silent interlude issue with Snake Eyes on the cover, and a few other issues, just stuff I was just able to just grab and throw in that box quickly and then hide while the rest were being taken out. And New Mutant Special is one that I lost in that. I actually replied to Kerwin on his comment directly and said that I've managed to, the good news is I've managed to replace the majority of those books that I had to burn as a kid. You know, at the time I probably had like 2 or 3 long boxes worth of comics. I didn't actually have long boxes. They were just piled up everywhere. But that's probably all I had, was maybe 2 or 3 long boxes. But I've managed to replace the majority of them. But there's still a handful of really great comics that I do not have, that I've had to like buy facsimiles of. These are heartbreaking. Okay, Avengers Annual 10, that was one that was burned. I had to buy a facsimile of it. I got the recent True Believer, so you know I have the actual I can read the story and enjoy the artwork and whatnot, but I don't have the original printing. The other big one that I realized after I responded to Kerwin was Secret Wars 8 with the first appearance of Spider-Man's costume. Bought that right off the rack at the Rite Aid. Wore it out. Absolutely loved that costume. Believe it or not, I actually submitted a Spider-Man design as a little kid. I designed the costume and I sent it in. You know, there was an ad in like the it was either in the bulletin, the bullpen 8 pages, or just the letters column or something in one of the Spider-Man books, or maybe it was a Marvel Age or something. I don't remember exactly. Maybe somebody, one of the denizens of the dojo out there, can respond to me and remind me. But it said, hey, send us your design. So I did. I designed a new Spider-Man costume, sent it in. Never heard anything. I mean, I drew it on like notebook paper, you know, with the blue lines and everything. And I penciled it and then went over it with like crayons to color it. So there you go. They did not accept my design and instead went with the what is now the classic black and white Spider-Man uniform, which I really enjoyed. I did not realize until years later, you know, as I'm learning about the history of comics and this and that the reason Marvel changed the look of all their superheroes at the time, which sometimes I was okay with and sometimes I was not okay with it because I didn't care for the redesigns, was because they were trying to get out of the legal issues they were having with Jack Kirby wanting his artwork back, Jack Kirby wanting copyright and trademark you know, portions for all the characters that he created. So to help their argument, they changed the look of the characters, you know, and that's just like the pure, just cynical nature of comic book companies and the way they take advantage of their actual creators. And in this case, you know, someone like Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, who poured their life's blood into these classic characters and were never really given their full due. I mean, really, you know, until we see those two guys, you know, popping up everywhere next to Stan Lee or Stack Jan. Stack Jan, I'm just mixing my words all up. Stan, Jack, and Steve, everywhere, you know, when they mention the creation of the Marvel Universe, they haven't received their due. Until those guys get a portion of some sort of profits from all these Marvel films that have made billions and billions, like they can't even peel off $1 billion for them or several million. I mean, come on, really? Then they haven't received their due. I'm talking a lot, so excuse me while I clear my throat. Na, 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 na. Today I'm using my Jim Starlin Adam Warlock sippy cup design. I am a huge Adam Warlock fan. Always have been, all the way back to when I first read about him in Marvel Universe, Book of the Deceased. Read his storyline and I thought, this is brilliant, because the Warlock storyline was actually wrapped up by the time I got into comics, which was in the middle of Secret Wars and Crisis. It was in that area when I started buying every comic that I could. Before that, you know, I had a smattering of Star Wars or G.I. Joe comics. You know, G.I. Joe was the main one that I bought every month. Star Wars I bought a lot of, but outside of the movies, sometimes the issues were not great because the writers and storytellers, they weren't allowed to use, you know, they weren't allowed to use Vader for this, or they weren't allowed to expand upon the Empire lore or the Jedi lore or whatever. So you had a lot of characters that were in these holding patterns. So it was not always a must-buy for me, especially once Jedi was released. It was not a must-buy at all. I mean, the stories after Jedi, they were good. I appreciate them now for what they are, but they were annoying because they weren't allowed to move that story forward any. And now we see, so many years later, with the rise of Disney Star Wars and what they did with their sequel trilogies and their subsequent projects, that it wouldn't have mattered anyway. They should have let them do whatever they wanted to, because Disney came along and said none of it matters to begin with. Though at the time, I remember reading in a magazine, some sort of trade magazine, some magazine about comics, where it talked about there was a continuity editor with Lucasfilms. In Star Wars, the writers, the editors, they had to communicate with the continuity editor to make sure everything that they created fit into Star Wars continuity, and that is why, for the longest time, the Star Wars comic book was considered canon, and for me, a lot of it still is. Okay, a lot of it still is. You know, Jackson the Green Rabbit. Woo! Okay, moving on. But anyway, thank you very much for the comment, Kerwin. I appreciate it. And I think that is going to do it for our mailbag segment. So thank you all. I hope you had a great weekend. You're looking forward to a productive week ahead of you. Do well with your content that you're creating, and pour everything you have into creating original artwork, original characters, original storylines that are all yours, that come from somewhere within, that you can share with the rest of us, because that is where true greatness lies. I'm trying to do it. I hope you are too. And if you do, I will respond to it. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your week. See you next time. Mate.